Welcome into the show. It's Daniel Werman coming to you live from the Dream Imaginate Sports Studios. It is Friday, June the 7th, and we will be joined here in just a few minutes by Dennis Crowley, the founder of Foursquare and the founder of Kingston Stockade FC. Really excited to talk to him and get his thoughts on Stockade, on the American system. Expect it to be a really good conversation. I hope you're having a good day, good Friday, TGIF, right? I hope you've had a great week. Today, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Women's World Cup kicks off in France as the host country, France, host Korea in the kickoff game. It's the only match of the day as the Women's World Cup kicks off today, and exciting times over the next 4 weeks or so for the Women's World Cup kicking off in France. So excited for that and excited to be following that. So there's going to be some definitely some dangerous some teams out there. So we'll see how things shape out and shape up for the U.S. women's national team, the defending FIFA Women's World Cup champions from 2015. And, it's not going to be an easy road. They definitely have the talent on the field to win, but we've got to see some consistency, especially against some teams that have the ability to play really, really good soccer, team soccer. France being one of those teams that may be in the path of the U.S. women's national team that they're going to have to get by. So we'll be rooting for you and hoping that you're able to do it again. But we will see how things shape up in Europe this summer over the next few weeks for the Women's World Cup and the U.S. women's national team. In other news, came out yesterday, the deal is official. Rocco Commisso has bought ACF Fiorentina in Serie A in Italy. And in kind of reading some of the news around it, it looks like for somewhere in the ballpark of an MLS franchise. And knowing Rocco and his team, that probably is no accident. Him being able to buy a club that is the same price as an MLS franchise, that would not be lost on Rocco and his team. And it really shouldn't be lost on American soccer. It's a travesty that the U.S. Soccer Federation has married itself to one company in Major League Soccer at the expense of everyone else. And I tweeted about this yesterday, and I had a couple comments, talking about, well, there's been a lot of investment. Here's the problem. In the time that Major League Soccer has been married to U.S. Soccer and everyone else has been shut out of the top levels of game, shut out, not able to access the top levels of the game via sporting merit. There's no access. You have to be accepted, and you have to buy into that club, Major League Soccer, to that company. Otherwise, you can't play at the top level. And so what has happened in the last 20, 25 years is there has been investment. Okay? So no one has ever said that there's not been money put into the game in American soccer. But the amount of money, let's say, is represents the space between my two hands, right? So let's say it's about 12 inches, just for an illustration. The amount of money that's been left on the outside looking in, American owners who have said this system is flawed, doesn't work, we're going overseas and we're going to put our money there and we're going to put it into the game. And this is the important piece here. Into the game means buying a club, putting money on the field, not just giving money to other MLS owners. We're talking about actual money going into the soccer system, not money just going to another MLS owner. The amount of money that has gone overseas, as well as the money based on those results that you would have to estimate would also be sitting on the sidelines, is way, way beyond 12 inches, way beyond that short gap. It could be 2, 3, 4 times as much or more going into the American soccer space that's not going there now. Keep in mind that American youth soccer is a $5 billion, with a B, $5 billion per year sports economy by itself. It is worth more, that $5 billion in youth soccer, that soccer economy is worth more in annual business than the Bundesliga earns in revenues. That is the top professional league in Germany. So whenever you see comments about U.S. soccer being interested in growing the game, whenever you hear comments from board members or leaders within U.S. soccer talking about the investments made in American soccer, you have to keep in mind that, yeah, we might be spending a nickel or a dime where we could have been seeing investments in the neighborhood of $1, $2, $3 compared to that 5 to 10 cents. We're talking about fractional opportunity, fractional investment. Limited investment means that there is limited opportunity. When you have limited opportunity, what do you get? You get limited investment. The owners who are involved in Major League Soccer could easily put more money into Major League Soccer. They barely pay their players on average. And take away the DPs, those don't count. I'm talking about their roster of players. You have players in Major League Soccer earning $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, and they're claiming it's the top division in American soccer. I'm sorry, you cannot compete with second divisions around the world at that pay structure for a roster. I'm not talking about a few DP slots. I'm talking about roster guy number 17, roster guy number 18. In the NWSL, it's even worse. You're talking about $10,000 minimum pay for an NWSL rostered player. Not a DP, not a U.S. national teamer. I'm talking about, a lady on the team that is 19, 20, 21 on the roster. We're not putting money in the game, not even on the level that they claim we are. And one of the things that infuriates me when I read about U.S. soccer growing the game or Major League Soccer growing the game, oftentimes the growth that they're talking about is holding hostage cities to leverage for tax dollars so that these people who have the money don't actually have to put much of it in to their local community. They don't want to put their own money into the community. They're not putting it into the roster, so they're not putting it into the soccer operations, and they don't even want to put it into their own stadium. They want to take San Diego and Las Vegas and Sacramento and Phoenix and Detroit, and they would put all these cities in a competition for one spot. And they want to leverage that to create what I call artificial scarcity so that they can extort those different cities and communities to try to pony up tax dollars in order to get an MLS franchise. It's absurd. It is absolutely absurd. We're not putting money into the game. We're fleecing American taxpayers. And our rosters are being filled with players who are getting paid pennies. And I'm not suggesting that all of those players should just get paid more. I'm saying you should have more money allocated to bring in better quality players. If you want people to watch Major League Soccer, if it's the top league in this country, and it's going to be taken serious as a top league in this country, then we should have the money to go out and buy really good players for the entire roster. Are we gonna have a Messi or a Ronaldo or an Mbappe or a Pogba in their prime right now? No. Why? Because the system isn't predicated on world class. But we could have really good quality players, players that are right now in that designated player range on a lot of these teams that you don't even know about, but they're brought in to bring some quality to the squad. That player could be duplicated. That player's not special. Those players can be found all over the world. And they would love to play here and earn $250K, $500,000, $1 million a year playing in America versus playing in the English third division or some in the English championship or in the, Bundesliga 2 in Germany. If we ever get to a place where we take it serious in this country with the federation and all members having access based on sporting merit, we're not going to see people like Rocco Camiso just basically being forced to look abroad. He wants to put money in American soccer. He said it over and over and over again, but he cannot justify putting that $150, $200 million into the New York Cosmos because the Cosmos have nowhere to play. They have no ability to get to the top. They have no ability to take their brand and their club and their operation and grow it as big as they want to grow it because there is a glass ceiling sitting on top of American soccer in the name and in the form of Major League Soccer. And until that changes, there are going to be cities and communities and clubs locked out, investment sitting on the sideline or going overseas. Markets are going to react to opportunities. Period. Study economics. When you see open markets, when you see opportunity, money will flood in when it looks like it can get rewarded. When they look like investment that has an opportunity to do something with their investment, you're going to see more investment. You're also going to see more investors investing. It's simple economics. So walking around and crowing about growing the game under the limited opportunity plan of Major League Soccer and Soccer United Marketing and the U.S. Soccer Federation, and not acknowledging and being so disingenuous with the fact that there are so many on the outside looking in, cities, communities, investors, clubs that don't have access to the top, and you're acting like, well, we've put in X amount of dollars when we could have seen 10X, 20X, 30X worth of investment in American soccer in the last 20 years, but have not, precisely because there are gatekeepers all over this system. This system is built on gatekeepers. Major League Soccer in the professional space. You see national sanctioning organizations on the amateur space. It's all over U.S. soccer. It is beholden to these conflicts of interest. It is paralyzed from being able to do its job by its own inability and ineptitude. It is a problem, and it will not get fixed by going around and touting a few moments here and there where you see an MLS owner do a little bit here and there. We're not talking about going out and throwing $1 million on a player while at the same time asking your city to pay for your stadium. We're talking about putting real money into the game. Maybe it's $20, $25, $30 million into your roster to actually play quality soccer. It's not quality soccer. The kids know it. The kids can watch on TV quality soccer, and if they watch an MLS match, they're like, this is garbage. They can tell for themselves. You don't have to tell them. They can see the difference. So we're not fooling them. In an age where we need to be authentic and we need to be real, we've got to first be real with ourselves and acknowledge the fact that we're not taking the game serious. At the highest levels of the Federation, we're not taking it serious. And until we do, we're going to see this story repeat itself over and over again. Time and time again, missing out on opportunity. All because the U.S. Soccer Federation is beholden to Major League Soccer and not willing to embrace its role as being a federation for all of its members. And the only way that they can be a federation for all of its members, to serve all of their members, is to give opportunity and equal opportunity to every member. That means any club in this country can build as big as they can get and go as far as they can go based on their own merit. And if they fail, they fail. If they succeed on the field, they succeed on the field. But there is no one at U.S. Soccer, no one within Major League Soccer being able to tell them that they cannot play, that they cannot join their club, their private club, their access to only what they can get access to. Every club, every player, every coach, that should be the motto of U.S. Soccer. If we want to make soccer the preeminent sport in America, or as I would like to see, make soccer and make American soccer the greatest soccer country on earth, we've got to start giving opportunity to everyone around the world, around this country, to become the best in the world. It'll take time, it'll take money, it'll take investment, but that's the path forward. That's what we need for this country in order for us to succeed and be able to really start to see us realize our potential. The sponsor for this half hour is Dutkik Brand. You can learn more about Dutkik Brand at DUTKIG. They have incredible soccer products there, notebooks, T-shirts, etc., and session planners. It's really cool stuff you should check out. And when you do, and you place an order, use the promo code DWSHOW. Again, that is DWSHOW, and get 10% off of your order. And at the same time, support this show. Thanks so much in advance for doing that. Visit and learn more about Dutkik at dutkitbrand.com. We will be right back after this with Dennis Crowley. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in this Friday morning, June the 7th. We are really pleased and excited to be joined this morning by Dennis Crowley, founder of Foursquare and Kingston Stockade FC. Dennis, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey, thanks so much. Excited to be back on the show.
So you are walking the streets of New York dealing with a typical Friday up in New York and noise in the background, and it's okay. We're those of us who really enjoy that noise, as I do, and I'm being serious here, that I do, will not mind it a bit. if you like quieter backgrounds, obviously New York's not the place to be for you. But it's my favorite city on earth. So anytime
It's a
I'm
great place
there,
to live. It's hectic, but it's a lot of fun.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about why did you start just kind of, I want to start here. Why did you start Kingston Stockade in the first place?
This is we're on our fourth season now, and so we started a couple years ago. It was really just it came from a bunch of different places. It was my wife and I were spending a lot of time in Kingston, and we wanted to contribute to the town and the community in some way, and we were looking for a project to make our own. And then on top of that, I kind of had this moment of like, hey, a lot of people sit back and complain about the state of U.S. soccer, and like, what do you do as fans, right? Like, you turn it off if the men's national team isn't performing well, and that's like your form of protest. Like, what's the bigger thing you can do? So a couple of people, this idea of make the club from scratch, other people how to teach other people how to do it in their community, and then let's see if we can start this kind of groundswell of support from the bottom, and just do tiny little pieces here and there to try to turn this into more of a soccer nation. Get just build soccer into more communities across the gut.
So in Kingston, what was the reception like in the beginning, and how have you seen that reception change or grow in the last 4 years?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was it's so easy to look at it now. Where you have like 800 or 1,000 fans a game, and just like, oh, of course this was going to work. But at the time, like, everyone was like, wait, what are you going to do? You're going to put a soccer team in Kingston? Like, who cares? Who's going to play? Even if you find people, they won't be any good. Like, how many fans do you expect? 50? Like, we didn't know, but we just wanted to build this thing. Like, I wanted to build it and try it and see if it would work. And then I remember, like, our very first game, like, it was like a slow trickle of fans in, and you're so distracted kind of watching the team and doing the operations and stuff. But the first like stoppage of play, I remember like turning around and being like, holy cow, there's like 800 people in the stands. And we were just like, wow, this is going to work, and it's going to work in a big way. And now, we're on a fourth season. Every season, we kind of turn some of the dials, like we introduce new things or try to do more interesting marketing or whatnot. Like this year, we have like a little mini beer garden and food trucks, and so we think that's bringing more people in. But we're about 1,000 people a game.
So, when you set out on this journey, one of the things that I know I've enjoyed, and I've heard this from other guests on the show and others who are involved in soccer around this country, is you went pretty public with kind of, hey, here's what we did and here's how we did it, and feel free to like dig in and look at everything and see what we did and learn from it and ask questions, etc. What compelled you as you were kind of putting all this together to go, hey, let's kind of open source this thing and put it out there, kind of here's our sauce and here's how we're making it, and feel free to learn, adapt, to study, ask questions, and do it yourself. What kind of sparked that for you? Was it the Foursquare software kind of background that's kind of prevalent in that space?
Yeah, well, we Stockade is kind of like my third big project, and like I had a company and we sold it to Google a bunch of years ago, and then Foursquare is kind of the second one, and we're like 350 employees and going like 10 years. And like you get like when you're building these things, you get kind of so caught up in the act of building them that sometimes you don't document the process, right? So there's no artifacts about like how hard it was in the beginning and how no one thought it would work. And so this time, it was very conscious. Like, if we're going to do something and we think it's going to work, let's start writing about it from the beginning, right? And let's just show people what it looks like from the inside out. Part of it was like, the world doesn't need another D4 soccer club, but the world could use, a bunch of clubs that are being super transparent with their financials, like to just kind of open the books and kind of open source what it takes to make one of these. And part of it was like, when we first got started, my first thing I did is I went to Google, like, how do you make a soccer club from scratch? And there was no search results. Like, there was like no results came up. I was like, no one's done this. No wonder it's so hard to do it. Like, why don't we just be transparent and just kind of make like an instruction manual, like almost as if you were putting like a Lego set together. We'll make one of those, but for how to build a small club in your small community.
And what have you seen in terms of feedback from that effort and the effort you've continued to do since you've launched? Have you heard from a lot of clubs? Like I said, I've heard from a lot of people, but I'm curious to know what your feedback and interactions have been in that effort and those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, at first, I remember going to the NPSL owners meeting and people being like, "Well, what did you just do? You just published all the numbers on how much it costs." And I was like, "Yeah, but that's a good thing. Like people will respond well to that because it'll attract the right type of people and it will push out the people that are in it to try to turn a quick buck." But I think that's been great. But I think what's been really interesting is like there are periods of the year where I might talk to at least one aspiring club owner a week, right? Someone will reach out on Twitter or someone will send the club an email or, you get a comment on one of the blog posts that I write. And then you follow up with these people and, on my walk to work, as I'm doing now, I have a half an hour conversation with them to answer any questions that they may have. And some of those clubs turn into real clubs. And that's kind of the point of it. It's like, how do you just make it easier for people to get started? How do you lower the barriers, right? There's tons of business books about how to go and start your tech startup. And there's just not a lot of material about how do you start one of these things in the depths of lower level soccer. And so, doing a little bit of writing about it and then also just making ourselves accessible to answer questions and just, tweet back at people when they're stuck somewhere. Just all of that helps.
So that same philosophy, that same mentality that says, hey, we're going to document, we're going, to curate this information, we're going to publish the information. We want to make, the entry barriers lower to get involved in the sport, but do it at a quality level by, seeing some other documentation, some how-tos, some step-by-steps, etc. And this philosophy of, taking opportunity, et cetera, plays right into the same philosophy of sporting merit, FIFA's principle of sporting merit. The easy way to think about it and the kind of phrase that's used is promotion and relegation. It is for the audience, and if you've been under a rock listening to the show, people who may have not heard the term promotion relegation, you must have been asleep or not listening because we talk about it all the time. But just for the purposes of this segment, it just means that if you win your league or finish in the top 2 or 3 places, that it earns you an opportunity to play at a higher league than the league you're playing in currently. And if you do really bad, you play at a lower league than you played before. Those same philosophies and principles of what you were talking about lower barrier to entry, documenting the process, finding ways to create more opportunity, plays right hand in hand with that same philosophy of promotion relegation. How do you think that would impact soccer in this country in all of these cities and communities like Stockade or Detroit or Chattanooga and others who don't have access right now to the top? What would that do for them in that same spirit of the stuff you're already doing?
Yeah, I think the primary thing that it does is it rewards clubs who want to invest financially in their products, right? And the product being the fan experience, and the product being the players on the field. And you asked me, one of the first questions you asked me is like, well, tell me where we are in Stockade land, 4 seasons in. And we're in a small community of 20,000 people, and we average 800, 800 maybe at the best we'll see 1,000 fans a game, and we're trying to figure out how do we grow from there. And we figured out that around a budget of about $100,000 we can get to just about break even, and then that's kind of it. that's going to be it for us until we decide, like, well, why don't we invest a ton more in players? Why don't we go from amateur to pro? Why don't we go from short season to long season? Why don't we make a run at trying to get into D3, D2? Why don't we, but there is no reason to invest. Like there's a reason to continue doing the club because we love it and the community loves it and it's super fun and rewarding. But to go from a product that's break even to a product that says, loses $100,000 a year or, loses $200,000 or more than that because you want to invest in the players and invest in the infrastructure for a shot at getting promoted. Like we don't have that incentive. And it's not just a Stockade thing. It's like a lower level clubs in general thing. Now, I mean, there's a lot of pieces that have to be put in place. It's not just promotion, relegation. It's also like, okay, once you get promoted, well, what did you get for being promoted? Are you getting a cut of the broadcast revenue for that league? Are you getting a cut of the sponsorship revenue for that league? Like a lot of this infrastructure that I think you take for granted exists throughout, European soccer pyramids and soccer systems. It doesn't exist here yet. And so how do all those pieces come together at the same time, to reward the clubs that really want to go out and invest and punish those that don't?
Completely, and it is for me it is kind of the chicken and the egg, which comes first, kind of scenario, and I'm one of those where I think it all has to kind of come. It plays off of each other. I was recently listening to a conversation on the Tim Ferriss podcast between Tim Ferriss and Jim Collins, and they were talking about the flywheel, and in that conversation about the flywheel, I think is spot on with the points you just brought up about an open system and what goes into that. It's not just about, okay, hey, we implement promotion relegation and now a club can win and move up, but what else comes as a result in that flywheel that kind of continually feeds that cycle. And European soccer has figured it out better than any place in the world. Commercial revenues, broadcast revenues, the rewards for going up, and even the ability to help you on the way down, so that going down
payments on the way down.
Exactly. Yeah. So that flywheel has created a sense of opportunity, but also a sense of scale in England, in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, the biggest leagues in the world, that we are not experiencing that in American soccer. It's not just access on the field to the first division, but it's also access to the revenue and the other elements that go into that open system, that flywheel of open soccer that is not in place, that has to get put in place for us to see change. And the way that I view this is that we need to embrace kind of the mentality of Silicon Valley in terms of the way that we need to approach soccer. We've been trying to do it, kind of really in a mid 20th century mentality is, I guess, the way I would use this illustration in terms of the way that we kind of approach technology and different things. And now you see anybody can try to develop an app. Anybody can try to build a website or a business or, something in tech and try to make it. It doesn't mean it's easy, but there's opportunity there. You can try to build whatever you dream of, and we need to embrace that same philosophy and mentality. Openness, I guess, is a word I would use for American soccer, and to have embrace that same philosophy there in order for us to see that flywheel start to get put in place. So when you're playing in as Stockade in the NPSL, the National Premier Soccer League, amateur league, it's a short season soccer league, takes place primarily in these summer months. For anybody out there who may be a general sports fan, I would equate it to like a Cape Cod league in baseball. You have a kind of a short season summer league, primarily amateur players that are coming to play in the league. What would need to change practically for Stockade and the NPSL and those collection of clubs to progress from the reality of today to the reality of being a club in the 4th division in the English pyramid? What are some practical steps or things that need to change?
If you want to compare like 4th division to 4th division, is what you're saying, or?
I'm just saying, like, if for the audience, what are the realities of being a 4th division club in England versus a 4th division club in America, and kind of what needs to change in order for us to feel like that?
I'll give you the answer from two perspectives, right? From our club perspective, like we play a short season. We play with amateurs. We don't have professional players, and the reason for that is because the best talent that's accessible to us is the college players in the U.S. And so, if you have college kids on your team, as we do, you cannot have paid players per NCAA rules. Like, you cannot have an unpaid college player sitting on the same bench, having their name on the same roster as a registered professional player. It's just against the rules. And so, things are different in the U.S. because of the NCAA, because of the dominance of college athletics. And, some of the best players in the U.S., like, I'm going to use soccer as a way to go get a free education at college, which I think is a great thing. And so it's a little like apples to oranges. But then the primary things, like when we think about like what's next for us with Stockade, it's like we got to play a longer season, right? We have kind of tapped out the growth potential, I think, that we have playing 14 games over 14 weeks, and we need to figure out a way to start earlier, play in the spring, and start later, play in the fall, which means put a roster together that doesn't have college players on it, which means probably paying some of the players, right? It also means like finding other teams to play against that can also afford to have non-college players and can afford to play, call it 6, 7, 8, 9 months out of the year. And the beauty of the NPSL is that there's 100 teams across the country that are participating in this short season league. Now, if you force everyone to a longer season, you'd lose a lot of them because not a lot of them would be able to pull it off. So I think we have to find the graceful transition in kind of like the upgrade path for like, how do you take this basic unit of an NPSL club, short season amateur players, and then, help that club take a step up and have access to a longer season, have access to the ability to add professional players and have them play amongst amateur teams. So there's a lot of little pieces here that have to get solved.
So, in particular, or specifically, the upgrade path, taking a club from where they are to maybe that next phase for the club. What kind of steps would Stockade and some fellow clubs need to do to be able to transition if they are aspiring? Maybe they're in the NPSL, maybe they're in another regional league in this country, but they aspire to play a longer season to start to kind of dip their toe into professional players. And professional players at this point is you're paying them $1 or above, right? So a lot of people hear the word professional and they think, oh my God, I got to figure out how to pay this player $100,000 or $1 million a year. Professional just simply means you're paying them at least $1 a year. They're under a professional contract.
Or even $0.
Right.
There's like such a thing as like a $0 professional contract.
So in that scenario, how do you foresee that upgrade path taking place for those clubs?
Yeah, I mean, I always think of it through the lens of products, right? Like I consider myself a product person. I've spent my career building like technology, consumer products. And so I look at this as like it's a product, right? The NPSL, the league, is a product. And it's a product that has the following characteristics, like, 100 teams around the country, which means you don't have to travel too far, allows for amateur players, and short season. And so that product works great. Now, it happens to be like the next product up for us, like just in the landscape in general, is probably like NISA, right? NISA, the Division III league, where you might be doing travel halfway around the country, which is very expensive. You'd be registering professional players, and you're playing a full season. Like that's like going from, like a Honda Accord to like a Mercedes SUV, and there's nothing in the middle, right? Someone's going to create a product in the middle that allows someone to, allows these clubs to say, well, I want to play a longer season, but I don't want to do it with the pro players, or okay, I want to do it with, I want to do a longer season with $1 pro players, but I don't want to travel halfway around the country. I can only afford to travel, in New England, or only in the Southeast region, or whatnot. And so those products don't exist. Like you can't join that league today. Someone has to create that product and then help people move into that. It's like it's like the upgrade cycle of a car, or like of an iPad or something like that. Like there's always a bigger and better product to go into. It's just like the problem in U.S. soccer is that there's such a huge gap between the products on the lower end or the smaller end, and the products in the in the mid tier or even the high end, call high end MLS.
So
it's like the challenge is creating, the challenge is getting organized and creating those products that give those teams an opportunity to try out different types of lower level soccer.
And that makes sense. While you were talking, it reminded me of a leadership talk that I heard one time, and basically he was talking to his team about this idea of steps, not programs, and to try to get his team thinking in terms of pathways instead of just, hey, let's just throw out a new idea and just chase it. And so he put his team all on one side of the room and put down a piece of paper, walked across the room, some 25, 30 feet to the other side of the room, and put another piece of paper down and asked if anybody on his team, without touching the floor, could they jump from that piece of paper to the other piece of paper on the other side of the room. And, of course, nobody could make that 30-foot leap. And so he was using that as an illustration to say that means that the gap between our steps are too far. We've got to put in other steps in between in order to take someone down a pathway to get them where we want them to go. And so it's a perfect, to me, an illustration of what you're talking about, that you have, a short season, amateur experienced, the best access to players that you can possibly get is a college level player in that kind of scenario, and then you're being forced to go from that to a longer season, more travel, paying players, and not only that, but then you have to start taking into account if NISA is that next step from the NPSL, you have to also factor in these, I call them, moronic professional league standard rules that are not even based on soccer, that starts to take into the time zones you're in, the net worth of an owner, and all of these other elements that, your club right now may not be, no matter where you're at in this country, may not be actually set up to be compliant with that professional league standard rule that have little to do with soccer itself or the viability of your organization. It's just an arbitrary rule in place. And so you have that hurdle as well as the travel, as well as making the jump to professional, as well as all these other elements that makes that jump so big and make it difficult, which is effectively keeping the lid on the growth of clubs around this country. In looking at, all of the aspects of American soccer and what you would like to see in terms of American soccer, what, in your conversations with people, in the circles that you're in and the conversations you have, what do you hear from others in terms of interest in soccer if it was open like a Silicon Valley and you could build whatever you wanted, dream as big as you could, and build and work as hard as you could to build that dream into reality?
This is a super deep question. You're asking really good questions here, right? So I kind of don't want to answer this question. I want to answer another question, if that's okay. And then we'll come back to this one. But you keep talking about like Silicon Valley and the open platforms, and like the platforms are like they're open but they're closed, right? Like the Apple iPhone App Store ecosystem, like it's open. Like I can go and build something, I can launch an app, and I can go make money off that app. It's great, but it's closed in the sense that like it doesn't work on Android phones. It only works on Apple, and it's closed in the sense that like one person's getting rich off that, and that's Apple. Apple's getting rich off the iTunes store. And it's the same thing with Google. You're making stuff for like the Google phone, right? You make apps for Android. They don't work on iPhone. Google might be a little bit more open, but you put them in the store. You follow Google's rules, and Google's ultimately kind of getting rich off that. And the problem, I think, like to continue the analogy here, is that like a lot of the leagues are just trying to get rich off their own. Like, oh, we'll just solve this, we'll solve this problem for this part of soccer, and our league in D2 will get rich, or our league in D3 will get rich. And it's just like you've got these leagues competing with each other, which is not the right thing to do, right? I agree with you that we need this platform, and it needs to be more open. But it's kind of like the person that's, I don't want you to say getting rich, but the person that needs to set the rules and set the standards and open it up, it's going to be the USSF, right? You would expect them to come up and be like, listen, we're gonna make this pyramid. It's going to go D1 to D6. These are the rules. Move your way up, move your way down. Even if you want to close off D1 and say like, we just can't touch the MLS because no one can figure that out, just enable it through the rest of the pyramid, set the rules, help the clubs do it. Help those leagues get broadcast deals, help those leagues get sponsorship deals, put them all together and make them work together, right? The way to fix this is like strong leadership at the USSF. And the scenario that we're in today is that the USSF just turns a blind eye to it, right? It's just like, we're just not interested in what's happening in D1 and below, or call it D2 and below. Like, just let those guys figure it out on their own. And it's just an unhealthy attitude. Like, we certainly need that platform, and we need the guidance. We need someone to put it together in a way that helps everyone. And in the absence of the USSF doing it, like, the leagues have to do it on their own, right? And, you got some of these leagues that are owned by individuals, which I think is the wrong model. And then you've got some of these leagues that are owned by the clubs, right? The reason I love the NPSL so much is like, it's like nobody owns the league. Like, we all own it. If you're a club this year and you play this year, you are a part owner in the league. If you drop out, you're not an owner anymore, right? No one's getting rich off the NPSL. Like, if the NPSL is going to make money at some point, we will distribute it back to the clubs. If we can do a broadcast deal, we can do a big sponsorship deal. Like that's the way it's got to work, from the bottom of the pyramid to the top, so that everyone shares in the successes of the league. And like, we're trying our best from an NPSL perspective to set this up and start to build from the bottom up. And the best thing in the world would be if the USSF was like, we see your vision, we want to help, here's the plan. And that we just don't live in that world. And it's just super frustrating. And it's such a huge missed opportunity.
Certainly.
So that was a different question. That I answered a different question.
No,
but
that
maybe
it's
it came
perfect.
around to your first one.
No, it's good. Clubs over leagues, and always is my motto. And if you have that philosophy of clubs over leagues, then you realize that leagues are just an organization of clubs in how they should be.
Clubs.
Exactly. Yeah.
They should be there. They should be anchored to their spot in the pyramid. And they welcome you in and they welcome you out, right? And they're just there to help make the game better here in the U.S.
Absolutely. So playing into to my other question, and I'm glad you went there, because that was great thoughts there that you shared. When you do have conversations with others about, hey, if we ever get it right, what do people talk about in that regard that you have conversations?
It's the question that like the fans ask. They're like, what if we're having a great season this year, right? So far, like, we're gonna make the playoffs. I hope so, right? The team looks stronger than it's ever been. And then, once the team is performing well, everyone's always asking, like, oh God, what if we win? What's next? And unfortunately, the answer to what's next is like, league and do the same thing again, because there's not an opportunity for us to move out based off of merit, and that's just the way it is. it's just a lousy answer. And so I just think it changes the narrative of the whole sport, of the whole purpose for the clubs to exist. It changes the narrative of like what a community can imagine that their club can achieve. And that's the beauty of the Open Cup, right? I think the reason that people love the Open Cup and love talking about it and fantasizing about it and wanting to make qualify, ourselves included, that was a dream for Stockade, like qualify for the U.S. Open Cup, and we did it, right? And the reason you want that is like if we perform, if we get super lucky, if the coin flip goes in our favor X amount of times, we'll play a professional team and we'll play them in Kingston. And is there anything more like amazing and romantic than that? And that's the beauty of the U.S. Open Cup. And the sad part about it is like that spirit of that only lasts like a handful of weeks, and only a handful of teams get to experience it. And like, how do you just bake that into U.S. soccer culture in general? Where it's like, your team's having a good year, you might go up. That means the organization, the community, as opposed to just where we are now, where we just don't have that. And so that's what the owners talk about. It's like, what's next? Because like, there's people that want to invest. And even if they don't have their own capital to invest, there's always people in these communities that are like, sure, I would put money into that club. I'd put money into that club in order to take it to the next level. Like, look at Chattanooga just did. They raised almost $1 million with their crowdfunding, right? Like they've shown that that's a model for like, if you have a club with aspiration and you want to go somewhere, one of the ways you can buy the ticket there is by doing the crowdfunding. And that's amazing. Like, that's a piece of infrastructure that now exists that didn't exist a year ago. But it comes back to like, well, what are they going to invest in? Where are they going? What's the master plan? And, like, they have big dreams just like we have big dreams, and we're just waiting for the products to exist so we can get our clubs in them.
And
sorry, you got me all riled up now.
No, it's great, man. It's great. And
I'm walking down the street in New York, and people looking at me like, "What is wrong with this guy?"
Nah, they'll figure it out real quick. That there's nothing wrong with this guy. There's something majorly wrong with the system. Every time I explain to people the system we have, the system that exists around the world, no matter whether they're soccer fans or baseball fans or football fans, they all walk away going, why don't we do that in all sports in America? Like, that would be so cool. I explained that to a dad a couple of years ago. He's a big baseball guy. And so it was easy for me to kind of, explain to him what the system of openness and promotion, relegation, sporting merit, and all that, how it would work using, the baseball setup in America, and saying, hey, if this AA team won, they're up in AAA. If the AAA team lost, they're down in AA.
Yeah.
And started to ask him questions. So I was like, so look, you're in a community, you have a AA baseball team. If they had a reason to win and go up, do you think that they would go around and find, the best baseball players in their area and get them into their system and into their team? And he said, absolutely. And keep in mind, this is the birthplace of Hank Aaron, who despite all of you Giant fans out there, there are many of us who still think he's the all-time home run king over Barry Bonds. And the other Hall of Famers have come out of this same area. And so it's not like there's been a lack of quality baseball players that have come from that area where we were having this conversation. And he got it. Like, in 5 minutes, he got it. He was like, why don't we do that here? That would be so amazing. So it's not for a lack of understanding by the people. It's a lack of will by the leadership of U.S. Soccer to get things done. And on that note, I know we can't get into any specifics on the Court of Arbitration and Sport case due to to the rules of the court. But Chris Kessel and I, have been working for the last few months trying to rally the troops around the country to basically come out in support of that effort that you and Miami FC and Ricardo Silva and his team have done in terms of working to, on that case and basically saying, hey, we support your efforts. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity here as we get to the close of this to just say thank you to those 300 plus clubs and organizations around this country who have voice support, official support for that effort, your effort, and in Miami's effort in that Court of Arbitration and Sport case.
Yeah, seeing that letter go around Twitter and then seeing it go from, a handful of signatures that what do you say? It's like 300 plus now. That's incredible. It's like, it's inspiring, right? And I think hey, for the folks listening, if you sign the letter, thank you. And if you haven't signed it and, you run a local club or you support a local club, either sign it as the owner or bring it to one of the ownership group of that lower division group and let them sign on to it. So thank you for the help in getting all those signatures. But I think if you peel back or step back one layer, this is an example of people getting organized, right? We have articulated the thing that we want to see, the change that we want to see, right? And we're able to articulate it now in a way and organize around that, get signatures, and push this stuff up towards the leadership, right? Up the leadership of U.S. Soccer, the leadership of the USSF. And it's just different now, right? I've only been in the space for 4 years since we started the club. I've been a fan forever, but really just a seat at the table, so to speak, since we started the club. And you can feel the narrative changing, and you can feel it getting more organized, and you can feel the arguments getting sharper and the support building for it. And we're doing the right things. It's just it just takes time. Everyone expects to wake up the next day and it's oh no, the pyramid's fixed. It doesn't fix overnight. It doesn't fix in 1 year. It's all of us together chipping away, making our voices heard, and kind of making suggestions and lobbying up that eventually changes things over time. And it's not just Miami and Stockade, and it's not just the 300 people that signed the letters. It's anyone that cares now has a voice for this stuff. And I think we're all starting to push in the right direction, which is awesome.
I completely agree. We are better together. We are stronger together. I have a saying that I like to say that, united, we rise, divided, they win. It's this idea of all of us coming together and working on different aspects, but all working towards the same end. We're going to be much better when we are unified and coming together rather than fighting in the same space where we should be trying to work together to create solutions. And that to me is the bigger point here. The whole idea of promotion, relegation, and open systems and sporting merit, etc., is about the idea of inclusion and opportunity. It's about getting the system right. It's not anything personal. It's not anything that is beyond that scope. It's just saying, hey, let's live in a world of equal opportunity and let the chips fall where they fall, and that's a much better way to get more investment, higher quality, better excellence, etc., than keeping things walled off and closed off. So, Dennis, look, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending time with us. And sharing your ideas and thoughts and insights on the system, on Stockade as well. Really, really do appreciate you spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you. Can I have my 30 seconds for my shameless plugs?
Go for your shameless plugs now.
All right, here we go. Stockade is playing in Westchester tonight, 6 p.m. kickoff at New York Athletic Club in Pelham. If you are in New York or Westchester or Connecticut, come over there and cheer us on. It's a small field, but we have been 6 games unbeaten, so we're psyched. We also have a game on Sunday in Kingston, Sunday night, 6 p.m. You can make it up to Kingston, catch one of the games in person. It's an incredible atmosphere. And if you can always go to stockadefc.com, read about the story, support the club, see the schedule, whatever. And I'm always accessible online. If anyone has any questions or wants to continue the conversation, I'm just at Den on Twitter, DENS.
Fantastic. And if you are in the New York area this weekend, check them out. Go support Stockade. They're doing really good stuff. And say hello to Dennis and the crew. I'm sure they'd love to meet you, talk to you, and share ideas, share stories, etc. So, Dennis, thanks for coming on the show, and good luck this weekend, tonight and Sunday. As you play six games undefeated, maybe you can make it to 8.
All right, that's the plan.
Awesome.
All right, great. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Super fun conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was Dennis Crowley, the founder of Foursquare and the founder of Stockade FC. I'd like to thank Dennis for coming on the show and spending time with us. Again, if you're in the New York area this weekend, tonight, Stockade has a match as well as Sunday. So you could have 2 matches this weekend with Stockade, one away and one at home. Take advantage if you're in the area. It would be worth the time. And I know they'd love to see you and hang out. So anyway, we will be right back after a word from our sponsor this half hour, which is Charity Water. You can learn more about Charity Water at charitywater.org. We'll be right back after this.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Thanks for Dennis Crowley coming on today. Hope Solo this past Monday. We have had a packed lineup and show this week with all of our guests. Just David Walding on Tuesday was great to chat with out in Austin, Texas, with the Central Texas Lobos. Ruth Nicholson on Wednesday, talking about governance and operations and getting better at what you do where you are. And then yesterday, Chris Kessel came off the bench to score the match winner and fill in as our guest yesterday, where we were talking about leadership and the need for leadership at U.S. Soccer. And then, like I said, and then Dennis being on today. So thanks for tuning in this week. Thanks for watching the show. Thanks for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. You can always watch and learn more about the show at danielworkman.com. or on Twitter, Instagram at Daniel Workman, Facebook.com/WRKMN. We will see everybody next week. Goodbye.